Hi, I'm Lance Lambert. Thanks for tuning into the Vintage Vehicle Show. We are in Torrance, California at the Edelbrock factory. That's the factory that makes the Edelbrock headers and the valve covers and the manifolds and all the other great speed equipment that they make. We are going to take a tour of the facility and see some of those items being manufactured. We are also going to take a tour of the museum here and meet Vic Edelbrock Jr. himself, and we're also going to meet some people who showed up here today just to show off their cars and have a good time. So you know what I tell you every week, just kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. If your history goes back as far as mine does, then you know that Edelbrock has always been a major player in the hot rod scene and the racing scene and the Bonneville scene, just everywhere. Where there was high performance, there was Edelbrock. Well, standing next to me is Vic Edelbrock Jr. Vic, it is a pleasure to have you on the Vintage Vehicle Show.
Thank you very much, and pleasure having you here.
This is a fantastic facility here. How long has this been here, this museum?
About 3 years now. And it will have memorabilia on the walls that kind of take us from the 30s all the way up to present time of where Edelbrock has been.
I know you were involved in, your dad, of course, started the company, but you've been involved since you were a little guy, so it must be just amazing what you've seen over the years.
Yes, I have. I just always kind of loved this, and when I was knee high, I was kind of getting in the way, but I just liked being with my dad. And then, as I came up from there, everything here excited me, and I wanted to be part of it. And it's just great to be where it is today.
Yeah. I know when I was a little kid, and of course didn't have a car and had no money, but I managed to get enough together to get an Edelbrock sticker.
There you go. Yeah, that's always been a lot of fun.
You have some fantastic cars here. Can we take a look at a few of them?
You sure can. You sure can.
Probably very early on. I know your dad had a 32 Ford that he used as kind of a test bed for his equipment, but also the midget here, the midget racing, he got into that very early, correct?
Very early. He actually got started a little bit before World War II. The one behind me here is a Curtis craft built by Frank Curtis, who completely redesigned midget thinking and midget technology. So this was number 7, built by Curtis, and my dad was very fortunate to have it. And then as it came along and everybody understood it, it completely rewrote the record books of all midget racing here on the West Coast.
And am I correct in that what was probably the most earth-shaking thing about this is the fact that it was powered by a Ford flathead rather than an Offenhauser motor?
Well, they had 2 circuits. Not everybody could afford an Offenhauser motor, number 1. And so they had a flathead V860 circuit, and they had an Offenhauser, what they called a blue circuit. This was the red circuit. Now, my dad first built the V860, and he bought that in late 45, early 46. And then in 1947, he built an Offie, and he ran both cars. And when he did, out of the 7 days a week, you were racing 5 days. And then trying to run his little business. He could only do that for a year, but he did it up and down the coast. But the important part of this car is the fact that it was the first car ever to run nitromethane in the United States. And it was because where my father found the Dueling brothers were in Culver City, down the street from where my father's little shop was. And they had already found it because they had slot cars that they used to race. And if you find one today, it's a very rare thing to have. And they raced it on a slot track, and they had to go fast. And they found this nitromethane, which was a rocket fuel. And then they gave some to my dad to run, and they ran it, and they saw what it would do. Then they were able to make everything work with more jetting and colder spark plugs and all that stuff to figure all that out. And when they got all through, they gained 40% horsepower in this engine.
One of my favorite cars is a 40 Ford. I'm surrounded by them right now. What do you have going on here?
Well, it's your favorite car, and it's mine too. Back when I was 16, I wanted a 40 Ford. That was 50, 51. Could not find one. Nobody, if they had one, they didn't want to sell it. And so I settled on a 46 Ford convertible. Unfortunately, I used that, and then I sold it. I should have hung on to it, but we didn't, hindsight. But anyway, I finally, Roy Brizio has built a lot of cars in here for me. And we were at a party, one of our parties at the SEMA show one year in Las Vegas, and the party was kind of over with, and Roy was there, and I was the guy with Roy. And I said, Roy, what are we going to do about a 40 Ford? I want to build a 40 Ford. And the guy with him says, well, I've got a steel body. I said, what? I said, come on, Roy, let's get together. And so bought the body from him. Didn't have the frame. And then these are all, they're both original bodies, but they're all framed and front end suspension and everything that Roy uses, so it's not like a original stock. And in this one here, we got a 302 with a dual quad manifold on an automatic transmission. This is the 351 with a 5-speed Mustang transmission, and I just love it. Got the coupe first. The story on the coupe was that I didn't want to flame it. Roy says, you got to flame it. I said, I don't want to flame it. And so he had the car up there for, he was fixing something for us, and he called me up and he says, Vic, I just flamed your car. I said, you what? And he did. And actually, I got to say, it looks very, very, very good.
So you were upset. You went back to get the car. You looked at it and went, okay.
I saw it and I knew that was the right thing to do. I love it. I love the looks of them. And, you know, someday I'd like to do a convertible. I might. But right now I got these two guys.
Yeah, well, they look like two of the best in the country, so they're absolutely gorgeous.
Well, thank you very much. We enjoy them very much.
There's Camaros and there's Camaros, and I think we have one that is at the top of this, being the most fantastic one around. Vic, tell us a little bit about this car.
Well, this is a hot rod test car, and this was the number 3 SS 350 small block Chevy Camaro built in the late '66.
So this is the third one.
This is the third one, first one in California. This came out to Hot Rod, and Hot Rod had a cover shot of this with a drag chute behind it. And then, of course, the guys at Hot Rod didn't return it back to GM. They used it as a test car. It's gone from everything from small blocks. They put a big block in it, and it had quite a life. Important thing for it was the fact that when it was still small block, and Jim McFarland was editor of the magazine, who worked for me for over 20 years. Jim did an article on a new manifold and a new carburetor that we worked out with Holly called a 3-barrel. And we did it on this car, and of course, that being in Hot Rod magazine just really opened the doors. We sold a lot of that product, and it was a kind of a nice stepping stone for Edelbrock. So that's why this car is really special to us.
All right, we're in California, and in California you have to have a Woody, right, Vic?
That's right, and my wife was telling me that almost every week. And this car is about 10 years old, and so finally I said to Roy Brizio, I said, Roy, find a Woody, but we're not going to tell Nancy about it. So we found one. I never even looked at it. Roy found it. I sent him the money for it. He started restoring it, and a year later, for Christmas, we surprised her. We had our Christmas party across the street, and we unveiled this thing out of the back trailer, and so she was very, very excited about it. But it is a neat car. It's got the different frame underneath it. It's got a 400 cubic inch Chevrolet in it. I wish I'd have left the flathead in it, but I didn't want Nancy to have to put up with a flathead because sometimes they're temperamental.
So Nancy's out driving this on occasion?
Oh, you bet. She has it. She enjoys it very much.
Well, Vic, I want to thank you for taking the opportunity to speak with us, and this is a fantastic museum. We're going to take a little bit of a look around and see more of the cars, so thank you again very much.
Thank you very much. Anytime.
We are in the factory, and I mean we are in the factory. We are surrounded by machines and noise and things. I'm with Terry Petrino. Terry, tell me a little bit about what this is behind us.
What you see here, Lance, is a transfer line machine, which is used to produce our most common manifold, the Performer manifold. It's been in use for 35 years now, and what's happening is it's machining all the different operations simultaneously at one time. So when it goes through all the different workstations, you end up with a completed manifold on the very back end. So as it shifts through, all the different processes are happening, and you'll end up with about a 6-minute cycle time from the raw casting to a completed manifold.
And the raw casting, is it the basic form of the manifold, or is it a block of aluminum?
It's the form of the manifold. It's done at our foundry in San Jacinto. We get it here, we put the machine finished process on it in the very beginning, and when it comes to us, we're just machining all the machine surfaces, and we're not putting a finish on the end because we do not want to ruin the finish that was put on in the very beginning.
So in 6 minutes, you have a product that's ready to bolt on your small block Chevy.
Not that quickly, but we still have to put together some of the gaskets, box it, clean it, final package it. But relatively speaking, yes, it's a usable, functional part. This first section here will be drilling all the top holes for the carburetor pad, and when it shifts over to the next operation, it'll go, as you see it moving now, it'll start tapping all the holes simultaneously. And each one of these functions that have a machine surface to them would be utilized on each one of these workstations and machined to that specific criteria that we hold to a quality standard.
I suppose you spin some dials, and at one run it's all for 350 Chevs, and the next run are all for Mopar, or is this thing smart enough that it does different things for different cars at the same time?
This machine, the way it was set up, is very functionally set up for doing one or two different products only, because it's such an old machine. We wanted to get our highest volumes, and the setup to do something of what you're talking about, Lance, would take about 2 to 3 weeks to change over.
Terry, this is almost the end product, is that correct?
That is correct, Lance.
And this particular, what does this fit?
This is for a small block Chevy, and it's a Performer manifold. It's one of our highest selling volume. It's for a basic street modifiable car. It's not a super high performance, but a moderately performance improvement to your engine.
Well, Terry, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It was very interesting, and thanks for taking us into the sort of high security area.
No problem. Thank you very much.
I'm here with Scott Herman. Scott, your coworker Terry was showing us some of the early equipment that you had here that still can be used for manufacturing, but here we have something that's pretty high tech.
That's correct. We needed to increase our capacity in our cylinder head manufacturing. So we took our highest volume cylinder heads, which are small block Chevys, small block Fords, and small block Chrysler cylinder heads. We need to increase the capacity by almost double. So we investigated a lot of pieces of equipment, and looked at a lot of different designs, and we came up with this concept, which basically has 2 high-speed CNC machining centers on it, and then it has an integral pallet system of 12 stations for each operation of those 3 sets of cylinder heads. This cell here can do a multitude of different parts at any one time without requiring setup or any more programming changes. All the machines have redundant tools in them so that if they wear out or break out, they can be replaced automatically. The machine has sensors to notify that. But the main thing is this piece of equipment here can run anywhere between 22 and 30 different part numbers, any one at any time, where the other machine can only run about 3 different part numbers at one time.
Well, Scott, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us. This is a fascinating piece of machinery.
Thank you.
One of the most important aspects of any Edelbrock equipment is just you got to make it work. You got to make it run right. So, Dan Dragoo, Dan, thank you for having us here in your department, which is?
This is the dyno room of Edelbrock Corporation. This is where we do all the product testing and development.
So this is where the headers end up and the manifolds end up and what else?
Cylinder heads, carburetors, everything that we make runs through this area.
So when something gets to this department, has it gone through engineering and sketches and buffing and polishing and whatever, and then they bring it here to find out if it actually works?
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably about the middle of the road. After engineering, it might go to pattern shop. It'll become a prototype. Then it'll be tested here on any one of these 3 dynos here.
There are a few viewers out there that might think that you have a great job to just sit and tweak a motor all day.
They'd be right.
Yeah. Dan, can you show us what's going on in here?
Absolutely.
So it get kind of warm and kind of loud in here.
It does. It gets a little hot, a little loud in here, but that's all part of the fun. Yeah.
What are you in the process of testing right now?
Right now, this is actually an engine for Cammy Edelbrock and Christy Edelbrock. It's going to be in a new street rod that they're having built for them by Roy Brizio.
How much is Edelbrock in this machine?
The cylinder heads, the camshaft, these are E-Tech 170 cylinder head. Camshaft is our new hydraulic roller camshaft. It's our 7516 air gap E-Tech manifold. It's got our vintage or polished race valve cover on here. 800 CFM carburetor, 1413. This is our crate engine. This engine was built here in-house and is for sale. Anyone could buy it.
Well, that's great. Can you rev it up a little for us?
Sure. Let me get over here. Hear what you sound like.
You know, some people might say that's kind of, you take the automotive hobby and take it down to its very core, and it might be just that noise.
Yeah, it is. That's what everybody wants right here. You know, they want that sound. And that's why we developed these crate engines for the people. You know, we put all our packages on a nice 350 crate from GM, short block, and we've come up with a great product. This is about 430 by 430 torque and horsepower, so it'll get you going.
Well, Dan, thank you very much for taking the time to share some of the inner sanctum here. Appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
I'm walking along and there's a red convertible that is just absolutely stunning, so I have to check this out. Evan and Eric Kimbrough, this is a beautiful car. Eric.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
What's the history on this? Is this something that you put together yourself or you bought it like this?
Yeah, I bought it. It was pretty much complete, but it was originally a white car. And when I decided to do a full restoration, all my friends talked me out of painting it white again. They said it wasn't worthy of being painted white. It was worthy of being painted a much more stunning color. So we chose this and changed the interior a little bit, and I think it came out pretty good.
It's not that rare of a car, but it's kind of unusual. So what kind of reaction do you get at shows?
Well, I think the engine probably draws the most reaction because they only made 6 of these with a Max Wedge originally. Now, I cloned this car, so I guess it's number 7. But that's probably the thing that gets the most attention.
Yeah, I would think so. And I'll bet you are pretty proud of your dad in this car.
Yeah.
And at the stroke of 16, is he going to give you this to drive when you turn 16 years old?
Yeah.
So the future of the car, are you just going to show it through the rest of the season, or here in LA? I guess that season is pretty long.
Yeah, it's pretty much about a 10-month season. So, yeah, I go to a few shows, but it's pretty much done.
Well, it's a gorgeous car, and thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
You're quite welcome. Thank you.
Lou Davis is kind enough to take a few moments to tell us about his 1973 Dodge Challenger. Lou, this is absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about it. I know you've done some interesting alterations to this car.
Yeah, well, I just custom designed my own cold air induction system, taking one of Edelbrock's breathers. The original air cleaner was discarded. I had a air box custom fabricated and then ran a duct all the way to the firewall here and put a K&N filter on it, because this way it draws in much colder air, which makes more horsepower. And what's interesting is, for instance, the ducting system is all basically walking down Home Depot's aisles looking for pieces that would work. You know, this is a plumbing reducer. This is your dryer exhaust duct. You know, things like that. Just finding bits and pieces that would make the whole system work.
I notice you actually have a ceiling fan in front here. No. So, Lou, you mentioned that you work in the aerospace industry, and you have a bunch of leftovers from a corporate jet in there?
Yeah, it was Ford Motor Company's corporate jet. And if you'll notice, the center panels and the doors and the dash is all basically the ledges. The leather on the seats was used from the headliners in the aircraft, and then the black panel was used on the chairs in the interior of the aircraft. And also the center console is from the ledges. So some friends of ours, we kind of scavenged the pieces left over from it, and over a period of about 6 months, we put the whole car together.
So is this a secret between you and I and the viewers that you have material from the Ford corporate jet in there?
Not anymore.
Well, Lou, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I've always had a preference for 46, 47, and 48 Plymouth, so this one just really appealed to me. Ed Silvera, this is a beautiful 1948 Plymouth.
48 Plymouth, right.
What's the history on this? How long have you had it?
Well, it's the same old story. You know, once you have one, you always have to have a second one. And we bought this about 8 years ago and decided that it was time to redo another one, but kind of keep it original, but kind of smooth it off. So we took it apart, basically. We stripped it, took the interior out, took the glass out, took the motor out, took everything out of it, and started over.
I think it's admirable that you left the six-cylinder in there. That's pretty neat.
You got to have a six in an old car, you know.
Especially the exhaust system on these sound great with it.
Yeah, well, we've done that with cast iron headers and 30-inch glass packs, so it sounds pretty traditional.
So the future of this car, is it just kind of tweaking what you have here, or do you have big plans?
We're still looking for an stock overdrive transmission, and pretty much otherwise we're done. It's a daily driver. You know, we drive it every day. We don't worry about when it's in the sun, when it's in the rain. And we go and enjoy. Belong to 2 car clubs, so we're pretty active.
Okay. Well, Ed, thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and this is a beautiful car.
Thank you very much.
It's going to be easy for me to remember the names here. I have Ralph Sr. and Ralph Jr. Simper. How are you doing?
Okie doke.
This is a beautiful 1958 Plymouth that you have here. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this is a 1958 Plymouth Belvedere. I've owned it since 1967 as my very first car, a $150 car at this time.
So when you got this back in the 60s and started working on it, how did your contemporaries feel about the car? Did they think you had one of the neatest things on the road, or did they think you were nuts? Or?
Yeah, I was talked about. I got a lot of memories of this car, just like the Christine movie. People thought I was kind of crazy for owning something like this. But that's my thing. The car was my style, and I had a lot of interest and care for this thing, and to this day I still do.
Well, Ralph Jr., he mentioned that this is his first car. Do you think this might end up being your first car?
He mentioned I was going to get a 66 Dodge Charger, which he has back in his garage at home.
And he will never let you forget that, I bet.
Well, I just mentioned it to him about a month ago or so that how would he like to have this for his project car. The car does run, but it needs going over top to bottom.
Well, that's great. Ralph Sr., thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Ralph Jr., same thing, and good luck on that car you've got hid behind your dad's garage.
All right.
We have had a fantastic time here in Torrance, California at the Edelbrock Museum, the Edelbrock Factory. It's been very interesting. You've met some really neat people. Speaking of neat people, we'd like to say a big thank you to Vic Edelbrock Jr. and to Cammie Edelbrock. We had a great time here. Thank you for your hospitality, and we will see you again next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.